a 32-year-old male, have been married to my wife, a 30-year-old female, for 5 years. However, in the last year it feels like she has become a complete stranger to me. When we first met, we were both established, and it seemed like we shared the same values. I attended a trade school and learned a technical job. I worked entry-level jobs before proving myself and building a reputation in coding. My references now hold more weight than my education. My wife, on the other hand, has a graduate degree and works in a management position. This initially caused some friendly tension between us. I used to complain about middle management, seeing them as roadblocks to completing tasks. However, my wife saw them as necessary for directing personnel and resources. Personally, I was stuck with a string of bad middle managers who viewed code developers as replaceable, and set unreasonable deadlines, promised features to clients, and created scope creep. Every time I shared my frustrations with my wife, she always took the manager's side, even though she had never met him. She would say he sees things you don't. After a year of dating, I learned to stop telling her about my workday unless it involved days off or raises. I always felt like she resented the fact that I didn't pursue a 4-year graduate degree. She had pushed for it before we got married, but when I broke down the loans and debt, she dropped the subject. We were both relatively debt-free when we got married and had similar earning power. However, 2 years ago, I started working for a company where the owner talked to me directly and saw my potential. Now, I make 50% more than my wife, and my manager is someone who works well with me. While he is not a technical lead, he embodies what a Scrum Master should be. I would say he knows how to stay out of my way, but that makes it sound adversarial. He is a great supervisor. The first 4 years of our marriage went smoothly. I didn't complain about my managers at work, and she didn't push me to go back to school and accumulate thousands of dollars in debt. We had fun, went on date nights several times a month, shared hobbies, cooked together, read books together, and watched movies together. When the first lockdown hit, we both worked from home. Our house is spacious, with 3 spare bedrooms, in case we decide to have kids in the future. One of the bedrooms was already converted into an office for me, and when the lockdown started, we converted another one into an office for my wife. While we both telecommuted, we had different philosophies about it. I would get up, make breakfast, shower, shave, and dress in a suit before walking into my home office. I must admit, I hate suits and ties, but it puts me in the right mindset for work. State of Oak. This is work time? My wife, however, rolls out of bed, eats breakfast, brushes her teeth, puts on a t-shirt and sweatpants, and goes into her office with the iPad to play Candy Crush between emails. It's the weirdest thing how proximity can create distance. She has several meetings a day, and I can tell because she keeps her door wide open, and I can hear them. I have 1 meeting a day, a scrum, and it's short. I close my door for mine. 5 months ago, she said she felt insulted that I closed my door for the daily scrum. I explained that it was for peace, and to keep my mind focused on work. She said she felt like I was hiding something. I tried to keep up our hobbies together, but she brushed it off as we see each other all day as is. I should have pressed, but I didn't. I treated the lockdown as temporary, and maybe I shouldn't have. It got really bad when her company instituted a partial office reopening. She jumped at the chance to be part of the 50% of the company back in a rearranged office to allow social distancing. I didn't blame her. I missed working at the office too, but my company hadn't opened up the offices yet, and as long as I had access to my development environment, it really wasn't needed. I think several of her other coworkers got into her head. She would stay after work to hang out with them and have drinks at a coworker's place. I pressed and wanted to know more, but she was secretive and guarded. She became colder and colder too. It felt like I had a roommate and not a wife at that point. Last month on a weekend, she put her old iPad on the desk and said, "Can you wipe this? I want to gift this to my niece." I shrugged. I often do that sort of thing for the family, and didn't think much about it. Off, she went to another company gathering and I switched on the iPad. Maybe my wife was becoming so brazen. Maybe she thought I wouldn't check it and just do a factory reset. The point is, I checked it and saw her messaging app. Pictures, videos, and instant messages with her boss. They had been having an affair for 2 months. I can't describe the feeling in my veins. It was like my blood turned to ice. It reminded me of the scene in Equilibrium where the polygraph flatlined. I copied everything, packaged it into cloud storage I use for development projects separate from work, and started looking for a lawyer. I didn't confront her at first because I wasn't sure what I would do. The new sensation in my body felt like I was both numb and walking through water. She didn't notice or didn't care. By that point, we were already in a dead bedroom. We were really in the roommate stage, I guess. I contacted a lawyer, and he wanted to keep investigating and advised me to keep my mouth shut. He suggested I hire a private investigator and recommended a good one. For the last 4 weeks, we have been gathering evidence, and he was preparing the filing for divorce. Be patient, he kept telling me, and my ice-filled veins and her indifference made it easy. First, yesterday my lawyer told me he had the filing almost ready. Our state is at fault, and the PI got photos, video plus the texts. It was pretty much a slam dunk. Then, last night, I don't know what happened to me, but the ice turned to fire. She came home, late of course, and I don't even remember what she said to me, but I went off. I said I hoped it was worth having sex with her boss. She turned mean, nasty, and vindictive. She said I wasn't there for her emotionally. I was just lounging all day at home, even though I was earning the lion's share at home. I wasn't intellectually stimulating even though I work a highly technical job. I told her I had a lawyer and she laughed. She said my bluff was pathetic, there was no way I was leaving her. That even if I divorced her, she would get half of my paycheck. If I stayed with her, at least I would get to occasionally have sex. So I shouldn't mess this up. She was a different person. I said to her, that's not a marriage. She laughed again and said, honey, this is the 21st century. A woman can have her cake and eat it too. She laughed again and went to bed. I emailed my boss and said I needed a week off to handle a family issue. He of course granted it. I slept on the couch in my office. This morning she left as I was getting dressed and only said, don't wait up. I went to my lawyer's office and he said he had the papers ready. He had a process server with him and asked how I wanted the papers served. I told him. My lawyer, bless him, laughed and said you better not. I've had so many people want to do a cutesy or revenge serving, and I always talk them out of it. Judges don't have a sense of humor. He told me how this could cost me alimony or assets. I didn't care. Her words burned me. I wanted her burned back. The lawyer did his best to keep telling me not to, but he relented when he saw how serious I was about this. The process server heard my idea. He laughed as well and said, you're my hero. I had to special order something with a rush cost. I sent the process server to pick it up and deliver that, with the papers, to my wife's work. The process server told me what happened when he was done. He said he had to. He said he showed up at her office with the large box and papers. My wife was talking and laughing with a group of coworkers and friends, and he asked her name. She confirmed and asked what it was about. He put the box on a nearby desk and opened it. It was a cake, one that you could get a custom image printed on in frosting. I didn't even know that was a thing until this morning. The image was of my wife and her boss in an embrace, clothed, but it was obvious what they were doing, with the words, here's your cake. Eat it piped in icing above the image. The process server put the papers next to the cake box on the table and said, you've been served. He told me what happened. He said what happened next was a loud screech from her. At least 8 people in the office saw the cake. My wife freaked out and swatted the large cake box off the table, where it fell on the carpet. But the image was still visible. Several of her coworkers started berating her, and she began crying and screaming. The process server quickly retreated. My phone was constantly ringing, but I just kept sending her to voicemail. I didn't bother reading her texts. She hasn't come home, but her mother texted me saying she is going to stay over there for now. The euphoric rush of the cake felt great, but as the hours passed, I started considering my lawyer's words. Did I mess this up? Update, I am overwhelmed with all the support I've received in the past week. I'm still off from work. My boss decided to give me 2 weeks, instead of the one I requested. I've already split our savings in half, put my half in an account in my name, and changed auto pay for the mortgage. credit freezes, etc. Everything my lawyer advised me to do with the household funds. First off, we have no kids. Second, I'm seeing a therapist to help me. I found one that is well-versed in dealing with infidelity. I've seen him twice, and I am feeling a lot more balanced. I still have some weird low points, but they are not as extreme as before. After the cake incident, I am definitely taking my lawyer's advice on everything from this point forward. He said, "You can be happy, or you can be right in regards to following his advice, and I now understand that." He told me that if my wife wanted to return home, I was not legally allowed to kick her out, but I should record all interactions with her. She's still staying at her mom's, but she wanted to come by on Saturday to talk. My lawyer told me I could, but he would prefer if she wanted to talk, to have it done at his office with her own lawyer present as well as himself. I presented this to her in an email and she responded that she didn't have a lawyer. My lawyer suggested that we meet at his office to have witnesses and record the meeting. I let my wife know that this was my condition for talking with her. She actually accepted. So I had 2 mutual friends come in, and all 3 of us had our phones on the table ready to record. She came in and tried to give me an awkward hug, but I just held my hand up, and the phone started recording as the 4 of us sat down at the kitchen table. She was genuinely apologetic. She said she felt like she was watching a movie instead of being in control of her own life, but it was thrilling and gave her a rush. She asked if I wanted to know why. I said I really didn't care at this point. She felt that she owed that much to me and told me. She said that when she started going back to the office when it reopened, she became close with 3 female coworkers, each a few years older than her, and 2 of them were divorced. They manipulated her and told her that she deserved more than what she was getting. They constantly asked her about her home life. The ringleader apparently was psychoanalyzing me from my wife's stories. My wife told them about my issue with managers back in my early career, and the ringleader took this to mean I was threatened by educated people. The ringleader told her that I was a submissive male and that she needed a take-charge man in her life. If I found out, I might have shouted and threatened, but would have eventually complied. My wife still has her job for now, but only just. The people who saw the cake were my wife, the 3 witches, her affair partner/boss, and according to her, 2 other co-workers who were lateral to her. The boss immediately ended the affair and told her to only communicate with him by email. He also warned her that if she ever tried to show up in his office alone, he would call in a co-worker immediately. The 3 witches turned on her immediately and publicly berated her for her actions. The other co-workers, according to her, didn't want to get involved in her drama, so no reports were made to HR. She said her 3 friends doing a 180 on her immediately shook her out of her fog. She seemed really ashamed and said she had to ask for $5,000. I was confused, because there was still money left in her account. I made it a point to remind her that she had it. She was living with her mom and didn't have any major expenses. It turns out the ringleader and the other 2 witches wanted to be paid for their silence. They were blackmailing her and gave her a deadline, threatening to reveal all the sordid details to HR. She was pleading for help. I told her that there was no going back to normal after this, and that everything would change. I warned her that if she gave in now, they would continue to demand more money in the future. It would be best for her to report herself, her boss, and her coworkers. It would work better than having sleepless nights waiting for the knife to fall. She seemed hesitant, but she finally asked the big question, "What about us? Where does that leave us?" I told her there was no us anymore, and that she should get herself a lawyer to go over the divorce. The best I could do was advise her on how to handle her work situation, but she most likely needed to find another career after this. I also suggested she go to therapy herself, as someone who could go from laughing in my face to pleading for help a week later needed help sorting themselves out. She pointed out the cake, and all I said was, "Yeah, and I am seeing someone for that." She left soon after that. There has been no word on whether she will follow my advice or try to pay her coworkers blackmail. Why is it always the coworkers? Final update. In the first week back at work, my boss decided to let everyone off at noon today for Good Friday's Easter weekend. I'm doing a lot better now. I'm still seeing an individual therapist, and last weekend, I drove out into the rural roads to unwind and saw a dog breeder. I was driving by and was curious. I stopped in and met an Asian breeder who had a breed of Asian dogs I had never seen before. He told me about their extreme loyalty and bravery. After playing with a few of them, I am considering going back to buy one, even if they are quite pricey. I believe they are called Jindos. My wife has always wanted a dog, but she has never found a breed she liked. Anyways, she still has not moved back in or made any direct attempts to contact, but she did hire a lawyer. My lawyer called me and said something like, "Buckle up. You're going to visit a marriage counselor." I told him I didn't want to see one. The divorce was happening no matter what. He agreed, but then said, "Normally, I'd tell the other attorney to pound sand, but now I have to paint you as a reasonable person, so you have to entertain reasonable requests. This is why it is important to listen to your attorney." If I had held back my anger, I would have been able to ignore this request. He did give me advice for the session. Don't admit fault, don't concede I failed anywhere, don't agree to anything, not even a second session. Just attend this session, and if I still want a divorce, answer questions as neutrally as possible. Don't yell, don't shout, don't accuse. The visit, if it could be called that, was via Zoom. I was at home, my wife was at her mother's home, and the counselor was in what appeared to be an office. It was interesting. The counselor seemed to be trying to spread the blame. Surely you can see how distance can create a need. I simply said I don't agree. It takes two people to create a rift in a marriage. Yeah, she and her boss. Holding on to this is staying in the past. There could be a wonderful future. Past behavior is a good indicator of future behavior. I wouldn't pretend for a second that I played mind games or ran circles around her, because I didn't. I just didn't engage more than I had to. It was 2 hours of her and my wife trying to make me take even 10% of the blame, so she could say, "See, it was both of your faults." Now let's rebuild. Near the end of the session, the counselor asked me why I was acting so cold. I said something along the lines of, "Did you know infidelity can create the same mental damage as PTSD?" The counselor said, "I've heard something like that before, yes." The session's time was running out, and I was about to sign out when my wife asked if I was okay with attending another session next weekend. I said I didn't think that was a good idea. She then begged, "What would it take for me to agree to a session next week?" I said goodnight and signed off. Now I'm just waiting to see what the next reasonable request is that I can't turn down, just so my lawyer can paint the picture that I'm a well-adjusted guy who had one outburst of bad behavior versus a trend of bad behavior. While OP, you really handled yourself very well. What she did was cold, bold and shameless. She deserves everything she gets. Like your lawyer said after the divorce, his final report, everything to HR and tell the boss's wife everything. If there's anything else you can do, do that. Don't let her come crawling back. She is a heartless, stone-cold woman, and that's that. In the meantime, I wish you the best of luck, and hope you are able to recover from your situation. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's story. Please feel free to comment below with your thoughts on today's story, and like and subscribe if you haven't already. If there is a story you would like to share with me, please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.